Now go over to the next passage, which is John chapter 14, verses 1 and 2. John chapter 14, verses 1 and 2. Now we're going to hear what Jesus has to say about this. We have the time this morning, so let me add a PS to it. When Paul said that that was a new truth, before we get to what Jesus said, let's fulfill that a little bit. Let's broaden that out. When he said it's a new truth, it was not known in the Old Testament. This was for the church age. They knew that Jesus Christ was going to return to earth, so it couldn't have been that. How did they know that? Jesus had told them in John 14 where we're going. He had also told them in Acts chapter 1, remember when he went up to heaven? In fact, take a look over there. Before we get to John 14, let's turn back to Acts chapter 1. I want you to see this because there's another thing that's important. When you're not in a hurry, you can do some of these little sidelines here. Acts chapter 1, verse 9 through 11 is very interesting in terms of prophecy. Verse 9, and when he had spoken these things, while they beheld, he was taken up, and a cloud received him out of their sight. And while they looked steadfastly toward heaven as he went up, behold, two men stood by them in white apparel, which also said, Ye men of Galilee, why stand ye gazing up into heaven? This same Jesus which is taken up from you into heaven, this same Jesus which is taken up from you into heaven, shall so come in like manner as ye have seen him go into heaven. So here, you can underline those words, shall so come in like manner as ye have seen him go into heaven. They knew that he was coming back. He would return to earth. So what Paul was telling them had to be different from his second coming, if you want. Also had to be different from what they knew in the Old Testament about resurrection. Well, let's see about that. Daniel 12:2. Did they know about resurrection? Sure they did. Take a look at Daniel chapter 12, verse 2. Many of them that sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake, some to everlasting life, and some to shame and everlasting contempt. Daniel knew about the resurrection. So what Paul was saying, that wasn't the resurrection. That was an old truth. Paul says, I got something new for you. Abraham knew about the resurrection. You say, how did Abraham know about the resurrection? Hebrews chapter 11, if you want. Take a look at verse 17 through 19. Goes back to when Abraham offered up Isaac on the altar. By faith, it says, Abraham, when he was tried, offered up Isaac. And he that had received the promises offered up his only begotten son, of whom it was said, that in Isaac shall thy seed be called. Now, think about this. If the seed, the promised one, is going to come through his son Isaac, then what was Abraham going over and killing his son? Can you figure that one out? Here's how Abraham had it figured out. He accounted that God was able to raise him up, a resurrection. So Abraham believed in the resurrection, even from the dead, from whence also he received him, figuratively speaking. Job also knew about it. Take a look at Job 19, verses 25 through 27. Job chapter 19, verses 25 through 27. You've heard this at the funerals. For I know that my Redeemer liveth, and that he shall stand at the latter day upon the earth. And though after my skin worms destroy this body, yet in my flesh shall I see God, whom I shall see for myself, and mine eyes shall behold, and not another. How my heart yearns within me. All I want to get to here is Daniel, Abraham, and Job. They knew about the resurrection. Jesus said he was coming back in Acts chapter 1, so the boys knew about the second coming. So Paul says, I'm giving you a new truth. It couldn't be the resurrection, because they knew that, and it couldn't be the second coming. They knew that, so it's got to be the rapture.